What's up, psychedelic investors? My name's James, and boy, oh boy, do we have a special episode for you today. I'm going to be interviewing Daniel Carcillo, who is not only the leader of a biotech company focusing on psychedelic medicines, but he is also a two-time NHL Stanley Cup champion. He won 2 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks. So in today's interview, we're going to go through how does somebody go from being a top of the sporting world to leading a biotech company. We're going to talk about what separates Wesana from all the other psychedelic medicines companies that are in the field. We're going to discuss how Wesana is attempting to treat TBI and also touch on a really cool partnership that the company has with Mr. Mike Tyson. All right, guys, without further ado, let's introduce the man of the hour. Drum roll, please. Mr. Daniel Carcillo. Dan, thanks so much for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me, James.
So why don't we just hop right into it? What is the problem that Wesana is trying to tackle?
So our business is specific to 2 different business lines. We have care development in that we have a drug development side to our business that's going through the proper regulatory framework in the FDA, in Health Canada, and in Europe to get drugs approved, to follow on a diagnosis and get this to the patients that need it the most, which are TBI survivors. There's millions of us per year, 5.6 million that go to the ER every year.
And what is TBI?
Traumatic brain injury. So traumatic brain injury survivors, a form of a traumatic brain injury is concussion. And there's 5.6 million of us that go there, and there's no FDA approved pharmaceutical for any of the symptoms. So that's one of the problems that we're trying to address. And we're also a company that believes strongly in ethical delivery of these medicines. A framework does not exist for a high dose psilocybin or MDMA. And so we're at the forefront of building that framework currently. And as we're building it out, we're also treating people with psychiatrist-led mental health services that's inclusive of FDA-approved ketamine.
So just to clarify / recap and jump in if I get anything wrong here, basically what Wesana is trying to do, primarily, y'all are also doing other things, but primarily is treating people that have had trauma to the head, perhaps repeated times, perhaps just once, that are, as a result of said trauma, dealing with really severe issues, maybe depression, maybe more physical issues. And at the moment, there's just no real good treatment option for these individuals. Like you said, that there's no drug on the market yet for anybody that has traumatic brain injury. So you guys are working primarily on using a psilocybin formulation in combination with therapy and also microdoses. We'll get to that later, to help treat these people that at the moment just don't have any real avenue for treatment. Is that more or less the gist of it?
Yeah, buddy, that's a great recap. Are you employed by us?
Not yet. Maybe one day.
So right now, the reason there aren't any addressable pharmaceuticals to treat traumatic brain injury is because the FDA hasn't validated an animal model specifically for traumatic brain injury. So our company is going after symptoms that are derived from physical trauma. And they're not unlike common mental health symptoms like anxiety and major depressive disorder. So our first indication is traumatic brain injury related major depressive disorder. And we're excited. We've seen this formulation anecdotally work in hundreds of thousands of people that report on different forms. And obviously I came to it through a personal journey. So bringing it through the proper regulatory framework will allow a doctor to basically give somebody a diagnosis and then follow on with a prescription to this pharmaceutical.
So let's talk about that for a moment, how you personally came to this, because from the outside looking in, a lot of people might think that this is somebody that's literally on top of the sporting world right now. You just came off of your 2nd Stanley Cup championship. How does one go from there to leading a biotech company?
So I fought 164 times over 12 years, and that brought on a lot of trauma. And I was starting to deal with symptoms like slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues. memory loss, short-term, long-term, appetite loss, anxiety, depression, and that doesn't bode well to try to continue on to be a professional athlete. So I had to make a decision for myself to step away. And the last 8 years, I've been on a brain health journey to research what had happened to me and then advocate for other survivors of possible treatments that are out there now today. And then also advocate for these fungi and plant medicines that have helped to accelerate my recovery. Now, I'm very careful to say, although they really helped accelerate my recovery the last 3 years, I use these medicines in conjunction with watching my diet, focusing on sleep, neurofeedback, other tools that help to enhance neuroplasticity and really helped my recovery.
So this is personal for you. This isn't just academic. You've lived through having traumatic brain injury and you know of the horrors that it can cause and also a potential solution. And that's part of the reason why you founded this company, is to try to help people that are dealing with the same issue that you had, and maybe the same solution that helped you can help other people.
Correct. Yeah. Traumatic brain injury, the number one cause of death after one is suicide. I truly believe it's because we don't understand the constellation of symptoms that can arise, as I just described. And so for me, it's very personal. I advocate for different treatments, different diagnostics all the time in order to provide hope. Hope, when you lose hope, that's when the dark thoughts, the suicidality can really start to take over. And I'm no stranger to that. So I'm just blessed, grateful that I was able to be shown this medicine, brought through it in a proper manner, prepared properly, integrated properly, meaning, learning what I saw and how to integrate that into my everyday life. And then just that continuum of care, which I think differentiates us from every other company out there in the space, as far as this will be an at-home adjunct therapy that can live on your counter, as far as the microdose that I've been taking for the last 3 years.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because a lot of people that are watching this are going to be investors and they're going to be interested in how Wesana, and specifically how Wesana's treatment paradigm, differs from other companies. So I know that you guys are not only doing a large dose combined with therapy, as many other companies like Compass Pathways are doing, you're also combining that with take home, like you said, microdoses. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the regiment that you guys have planned and the reasoning behind it.
Yeah. So what we've seen is to wake up right and left brain hemispheres, which we think is extremely important in the recovery of traumatic brain injury. A large dose serves people really well. So that accelerates the treatment aspect. And what we see here with Compass Pathway, even the Card-Harris study, and we've proven the same thing out with our novel Wesana animal study, is that a large dose works, has great antidepressant effects, but then it wanes over time. So essentially at 12 weeks, your receptors reset and you essentially get depression again, right? So that doesn't really fit into a healthcare system right now, right? So what I've been able to achieve with a PhD biochemist is this regimen where after a high dose, I continued on with a low dose, non-hallucinogenic dose of psilocybin in combination with CBD. And what that does is over a longer period of time, I'm able to continue my therapy similar to an SSRI or a classic antidepressant, or more importantly, how birth control lives on a woman's counter. And it's in a lockbox, and they don't know whether they're taking placebo or the actual medicine. And what we were able to do at Charles River, a third-party independent lab that Novartis and Pfizer and GSK use to generate data, is we put this into an FDA-validated depressive model, and we dosed the mice with a loading dose of psilocybin alone, which, like I said, has great antidepressant effects, statistically meaningful. But then we were pleasantly surprised when we saw that a loading dose coupled with a microdose that is fixed and then a dose-dependent effect of CBD, meaning you're increasing the CBD amount, we saw that at the highest CBD amount, that we actually got a 64% improvement in depressive behavior. And so it validates the protocol that I've used, as well as, the protocol that I know hundreds of thousands of people use. And this validation through a third-party lab with an FDA validated model is really special. And we were pleasantly, like I said, surprised. We didn't anticipate a 64% improvement. We knew that there was going to be an improvement, but this brings a ton of hope to the TBI community for sure.
And it just makes sense when you sit down and think about it logically. Like, yes, in a perfect world, it would be nice if we could just have a one and done dose depression cured. But here in the real world, that's not necessarily the case. You might need to continue taking your medicine, as with any other disease that people may have, physical or mental. So it just does make sense to try to combine the benefits that we're seeing when you do the large dose, that we're seeing in Compass's trials, that we're seeing in Robin Carhart's trials, and so many more, like literally dozens at this point, to combine that with the potential benefit of not only microdoses, but then CBD. Because CBD, if I don't have this incorrect, is an anti-inflammatory, correct? And that's why where a lot of the supposed or hypothesized benefit comes from on the brain.
Correct. Yeah. So CBD is actually the only patented neuroprotectant on Earth, and it's patented by the U.S. government in 2003. Specifically,
hold up a second. It's patented by the U.S. government, CBD.
Yeah. Specifically against. Wild. Yes, and think about the year 2003.
Yeah.
And it's patented specifically against neuronal death as it relates to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Now, there's neuronal death associated with just depression, and there's most definitely neuronal death associated with traumatic brain injury related depression, and just traumatic brain injury in general.
To clarify, neuronal death, that means like brain dead, essentially?
Or? That means that your neurons are dying.
Okay.
Right? If you get a hit to the head, there will be this death that happens of your neurons, right? So as your neurons die, they secrete chemicals that kill other neurons. So this neuroprotectant can actually come in and guard against further death, right? So as we now just forget about TBI in general, as we age, what happens? We get cognitive decline, there's neuronal death. This can come in and actually protect and be a preventative measure, right, for people playing collision sports. But in my case, it came in, you kind of think of it as stopping the bleeding, right? And then putting this layer of protection on myself, and then furthering what the psilocybin does is it helps to create those new neuronal pathways, right? So you can't give CPR to a neuron that's dead. You can't make it alive again. What we can do is create these new pathways around the death and then connect the brain hemispheres that were shut down, right? And then you're feeling better, right? All of a sudden, my symptoms start falling away. All of a sudden, my brain fog, my brain fatigue, I feel better. I have energy. I'm creative. My language comes back. My slurred speech disappears. All of these symptoms started to either lessen in intensity or all but fade away.
So do you think in the future, people that are playing high contact sports such as hockey, maybe football, some others, boxing perhaps, should be taking a microdose and maybe CBD also as a preventative measure then?
Yeah, so a lot of them already are, right? But most definitely.
Don't suppose you can drop any names.
Not right now. But a lot of them already are. Yeah, they're understanding that, number one, CBD is legal by the federal hemp bill in 2018 to take. I just caution people, make sure that there's a COA attached to the products that you're taking because it's an unregulated market. But most definitely, once we get past this era of treating sick people, right, then I think we could start opening up the discussion for even the DoD and DARPA to show them how a microdose of psilocybin and CBD can not only protect their soldiers, but make them better warriors. And it's no different to athletes.
See, that's the door that you got to get in, because once you can prove to the U.S. government that it's going to help the military, then the door is blown wide open for you. All of a sudden, they're going to start caring.
Yeah. So we have, we've got some plans to file some grants and this upcoming year for some non-dilutive funding, and we're going to start opening up that discussion because the door should be open, right? We shouldn't just. I'm really big on, if a glass breaks and we know it's going to break, right? With athletes and with vets, we know that this glass is going to break. Let's try to not have it break into 1,000 pieces and try to put it together. Let's have it try to break into 5 pieces, and then it's easier to put back together. And to be honest, like that's where these diagnostics that we use in our clinics come in as well, where you're taking like a really nice pre-picture of somebody, and then post-injury, you take another. Without that pre-picture, it's really hard to understand what is off, right?
Mhm.
So this is the future. This is the future of medicine. It's personalized medicine. And I feel extremely grateful to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and if we zoom out from just psychedelic medicines, biotech in general, just medicine in general, the future is personalized medicine. That we're rocketing towards that. We're moving away from the old paradigm of one size fits all to measuring your biometrics, to measuring your genetics. All different sorts of personalized variables affect how you're going to interact with medicines, and some things may be better for other people as opposed to you. So I just really like the fact that you guys are talking about personalized medicine, because that's going to be one of the big medicinal trends of the 21st century, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the reason that we acquired APS ketamine, and the reason Dr. Abed Nazir is our CMO, and we have 2 clinics opening a third now in Illinois, using exactly what you just said. I was impressed that he was taking pharmacogenetics. He didn't have to, right? He's a psychiatrist, and he could have asked questions and then prescribed meds, but he takes it a step further, right? And 40% of the services we offer are classic psychiatrist services, because some people need that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking medicine to treat your symptoms. But if there's a better option and people qualify for it, like FDA approved ketamine, then we want to have a framework that can serve that. And that's what he was doing. And he's been doing that since 2016. We've been able to offer 4,000 ketamine infusions since that date. And we're getting larger. We're building a 3,000-foot facility. We're going to add in TMS to be coupled with that. All of these services are really important to distinguish. We're differentiated from, say, I hate to call them opiate mills, but they're like the new age opiate mills, where you go to these ketamine clinics, there's no psychotherapy, there's hardly any oversight, and then they treat people and let them go back into the world. And
what could possibly go wrong?
We have that proper oversight, and more importantly, we use insurance. So it's not just taking cash from people, and that allows people, it's more accessible and obviously more cost effective to those individuals, and you can rely on us, right? And then, we've taken it a step further in, like, with my athletic background and the way of mental health. The future is tracking inside the clinic and outside of it. So that means that when you come into our clinic, we integrate into your wearable. So whether that's your Apple Watch or your Whoop or your Oura Ring, we're able to track you outside of the clinic through our app. And say, for example, James comes in with an MDD, major depressive disorder diagnosis. He does really well for 2 weeks after the infusion, or after the medicine work, whatever may have you. And then we start seeing you falling off. We start seeing you not being active. Your HRV, heart rate variability, is all over the place, and your sleep is off. We're able to talk to you through the app, ping you in real time, and hopefully get you back into the clinic before you reach crisis.
Yeah, and that's the future. Like I did an episode a while back, like 6 months or so, essentially on the combination of wearable technologies and then psychedelic medicines. And the idea of avoiding a crisis moment just really stuck out at me because people can be fine 95% of their day or their week or their month. But if they have a crisis moment in that 5%, it can all go to shit in that moment. Like, excuse my language, but so I didn't even know you guys were working with wearable technologies to measure the patients throughout the time. So that's amazing to hear. Also,
Yeah.
so I guess just last question. You guys also have a really interesting partnership with the kind of famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, Mike Tyson. So I'm wondering if you could just walk us through what this partnership is and what is it like to uh, to work with such a character, with such a legend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful, right? Mike has, developed a really good friendship over the last year of working together. He's a huge supporter of ours. He's a traumatic brain injury survivor and advocate, as well as obviously a psychedelic medicine advocate. And just grateful that he's using his platform for good, and even advocating for Tyson 2.0 and cannabis, which has been shown to help a lot of people, right? There's a medicinal program in most states, rec program as well, but this medicine works directly with our endocannabinoid system that we've evolved with as human beings. And yeah, just feel really grateful that he's in our life, that we're able to speak to his following and millions of people and really get the message out that we can treat mental health in a different manner. We could talk about it. There doesn't have to be that shame associated with it. And asking for help isn't a weakness. It's a signal and it's a sign of strength if you can do it.
And it's important, I think, also for athletes and maybe even just men in general to be able to look at these kind of like, stereotypical big macho men and understand that they too have problems. They too struggle with mental health. They too struggle with traumatic brain injury. And it's not something to be ashamed of getting help. So I think that it is important that people like yourself, like Mike Tyson, are really kind of being thought leaders as well as business leaders here.
Yeah, it's when you think of mental health and you think of speaking your truth that I struggle. I still have days that they're not like the days before, but like I stress, right? But I have so many tools that I've acquired, right, that I know work for me, and that's what I would advocate. And I tell people, don't look at me, don't compare yourself to what works for me. Try it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, try something else and find what works for you in those times of stress or when you wake up and you feel itchy, you feel like something's off. For me lately, like it's been running, and making sure I get on my bike outside in nature. And again, most people, if you're listening to this, and I used to do this too, where it's like, oh, running, like, I can't do that. Go walk.
Daniel, you're a hockey player. Come on.
Oh man, you wouldn't believe how bad my knees are, my friend.
Fair,
So,
fair.
but just walk, just
Hmm.
do something, get outside, right? If it's not warm where you are, get in the snow, or breathe. Or one of the best things to do when you wake up is hydrate. Are you hydrated, right? Just drink a bottle of water. It could be that simple. And then if it's as bad as waking up and just getting into the shower, pat yourself on the back for that. Like, it's a fine line between motivating yourself, right, and being gentle to yourself as well. But, some days I wake up and I do the opposite of what my brain tells me to do, right? And I have to continue to evolve and move forward. And then, I would advocate for just like finding a friend, that you can rely on and talk to and reach out to.
So I think this is important too, because often in the discussions that I have, because we are so hyper focused on psychedelics and their potential, we can often forget about the things that you should be doing first, which is being healthy, seeing the sun, having a proper diet, getting a little bit of exercise. Like if you're not doing any of that, and yes, may not necessarily be your fault. But if you don't have a proper diet, proper exercise, you're liable to not be in a great mental state as it is. So we need to understand that in being healthy, we need to take a holistic approach and do the basics first, lay the groundwork of our kind of our pyramid of health type of thing. So I think that it is important that you are talking about the basic things people need to be doing too, as well as the more, I don't want to call it an extreme approach, medicines like this, but you take those once once the first steps don't necessarily work. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. I don't
No,
know if
no,
that
no,
makes sense.
don't say sorry at all, man. You're bang on. You're bang on. This is just a tool, right? And yes, it's an exciting tool, but we have to remember it's one tool. And to your point, if you are eating like crap, and if you're not moving, and if you're in a victim mindset, this will not work, right? And so I advocate for, there's so many things that we can do. There's so, like I mentioned, right? Hydrate, have a positive outlook on life. The way that we think directly impacts the way that we feel. That's been proven in neuroscience, right? Exercise, right? And that doesn't mean you need to exercise for 30 minutes. Maybe it's 3 the first day, right? Self-deprivation float tanks are an amazing tool, and they're not expensive. If you can't do that or get to like reflexology, roll on a golf ball. That's like a really amazing feeling. Massage, right? If you can't do that, buy a $10 roller and roll out in the morning. There's so many tools out there. There's hyperbaric chamber. There's acupuncture. There's chiropractic work. There's cranial sacral, which is decompressing the head. There's
And at the end of the day, you got to do what's good for you. Like you were
yeah,
saying earlier, not everything will work for everybody, so you need to find what works for you. So
try
just
it
to
all,
wrap
man.
it, try it
Try it
all.
all.
Just to wrap this up, is there anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to Wesana that we haven't got into yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like beyond excited for the feedback we're going to receive in a written response from the FDA tomorrow about our Sauna 13 program, which is our first drug development program using high dose psilocybin in a clinic, and then the low dose microdose psilocybin and CBD combination at home. So, we're really excited about that. We're progressing our negotiations and talks with MAPS for our term sheet to possibly use MDMA for a TBI related symptom. And our clinics are at capacity, and that's the use case for opening up our third, and we're looking at a fourth location now. So just feel really grateful to have this recovery and found this medicine, and to have an amazing team around me. I would be nothing without this team at Wesana, both on the clinic side and the drug development side, and the people in the back end that we never talk about and never get seen. So just feeling really grateful and blessed, man.
Well, thank you so much for being on the program today. I feel like I learned a lot about Wesana. I'm excited to maybe hopefully in the future get the chance to have this interview in person, maybe down in Wonderland next year.
That'd be great.
Perfect. Have a great one, Daniel.
Thanks, James.